Okay, in this video, we're covering the 10.1 worksheet. Make sure to have a copy of your references with you. Okay. Number 1 says to graph the ellipse. First thing I want to do is identify if it's a major horizontal axis or the major is the vertical. Because the 9 is bigger than the 4 and it's underneath the x, I know that this is going to be a major horizontal axis. So the first thing I'll do is go ahead and cover up the other equations. Okay. So a squared is equal to 9, which means a is going to be equal to 3. B squared is equal to 4, which means b is equal to 2. I can use this formula here to determine my c to be the square root of 5, or approximately 2.2. First, I'm going to find the center. Center is going to be h, which is going to be negative 1, k, which will be negative 5. So h is negative 1, k is negative 5. For my vertices, I'm going to be using this equation here, h, which is negative 1 plus a. So negative 1 plus 3 gets me a 2, and then the k is negative 5. I also have h minus a, so negative 1 minus 3 is negative 4, negative 5. Okay. For my minor axis here, I'm using h, which is negative 1 on both of these parts, and then this part here will be k, which is negative 5, plus b, and then minus b. So negative 5 plus 2, which will give me a negative 3, and negative 5 minus 2, which is negative 7. Okay, I'm finding my foci. Okay, my foci is going to be h, which is negative 1, plus c. c we found to be the square root of 5, and then our k is negative 5. Then negative 1 minus the square root of 5, and then the k would be negative 5. So now I can go ahead and plot all my points. I start with the center, which is located here. Then I do the vertices, which is negative 4, negative 5, and 2, negative 5, which are here and here. I did my minor axis, which I found to be here and here, and then my focus is an approximation. Okay. Number 2 says just to find the center and the vertices and the foci of the ellipse. First thing I did was I went ahead and changed it into this form so I can see that a is going to be equal to 5, b is going to be equal to 4. We also see that the major axis is going to be the x-axis or the horizontal axis. I use the formula to solve for c. So 25 minus 16 is 9. So c is going to be equal to 3. Okay. Our center is going to be negative 5, positive 3. So identify my h and k here. When I do my vertices, I can go ahead and use the equations that I have on my formula sheet. Okay. H, which is negative 5, plus a, which is positive 5, comma 3. H minus a, comma 3. Simplify these, I get 0, 3, and negative 10, 3. For my focus, I went ahead and added my h plus c and h minus c. So negative 5 plus c, which is 3, and then 3. Negative 5 minus c, which is this one, and then 3. Simplify over here, negative 5 plus 3 is negative 2, 3, and then this is going to be negative 8, and then there's your 3. For the minor axis, we're going to be using this equation here, h, which is negative 5, and then k plus b. So 3 plus b, which is 4. Okay. K minus b. So I simplify negative 5, this adds up to 7, and negative 5, this subtracts to negative 1. Number 3 says to graph the ellipse. If you notice that this is not in standard form because it's not equal to a 1, so we need to rewrite the equation where we divide everything by 100 so the equation is equal to 1. I went ahead and simplified the fraction 4 over 100 as 1 over 25 and then kept the x squared. plus 25 over 100 is the same thing as 1/4, y squared is equal to 1. This is the form that we need our equation to be in. Now we are going to look at the 25. Since 25 is greater than 4, our 25 is going to be the a squared. So a is going to be equal to 5. Since the 25 is underneath the x, this major axis will be horizontal. We can solve for c by using the equation given to us in the formula sheet. C squared is equal to a squared, which is 25, minus b squared, which is 4. So c squared is going to equal to 21, or c will equal to the square root of 21, which is approximately 4.6. Our center, if you notice the numerator, it does not have a horizontal or a vertical shift, so our center is going to be 0, 0. That means h is 0 and k is 0. I went ahead and plotted those points here. For the vertices, we're going to use the equation h plus a k and h minus a k. Or in other words, a positive a and a negative a, because h is equal to 0. So our a here is 5, so I'm going to have a plus 5 and a minus 5, and our k is 0, so that will be 0 on both of these. For the foci, we're going to go ahead and look at our formula. It's going to be h plus c, h minus c. Again, h is 0, so it's like saying plus ck and minus ck. Our c is the square root of 21, so I have a plus square root of 21, 0, and a minus square root of 21, 0. Our minor axis, we're going to go ahead and use our equations. H, which is 0 in both of these cases, here and here, and then k, which is 0, plus b, k minus b. So we're going to have 0 positive b and 0 negative b. Our b here is 2, so here's 0 positive 2 and 0 negative 2. So now we're going to go ahead and graph. I start with the center, which is 0, 0. And then I'm going to go, my major axis, which is horizontal, is going to be 5. So I'm going 5 units forward and 5 units back from the center. Our minor axis is going to be our B. So our B means go 2 up from the center and also 2 down from the center. Once you have those 4 main points, you can go ahead and graph your ellipse. The foci I used here is approximately 4.6, so I went 4 and then about halfway. Same thing going back, minus 4.6. Now you have your graph. Number 4 is a long one. Here we need to graph the ellipse, but you can see that it is not in standard form and that we need to complete the squares. So the first thing I did here was I added the x's together and I said x squared plus 6x plus some number plus and then 9y squared minus 18y, and then take this coefficient, the 9, over to the other side, which is where I got the negative 9 here. I'm going to start by completing the squares for the x values. Take the middle term, which is 6, always divide that by 2, and I get a positive 3. Square it and you get a 9. This 9 goes in this blank and it goes in this blank. Okay. Now that I've had this part complete, I can go ahead and factor it, which is x plus 3 squared. Now I'm going to go ahead and factor out a 9 here. 9 y squared minus 2y plus some number. I'm going to take the middle term, which is negative 2, divided by 2. That gets me a negative 1. I'm going to square that, and that gets me a positive 1. The 1 goes to this blank, but does not go to this blank, because remember, we're multiplying by 9, so 9 times 1 is 9, so I need to add 9 to the other side. Okay, now I can factor that one. So this just came straight down, and on this equation, I have a 9 in the front, and then I have a y minus 1 squared. Okay, all of that is equal to, these two cancel, so that just leaves me a 9. Now the equation's not in standard form, but I need to make it in standard form by dividing everything by 9 so that the equation is equal to 1 here. So when I did that, I got x plus 3 squared divided by 9, plus the 9's cancel out here, y minus 1 squared divided by 1 is all equal to 1. Now that we have it in our standard form, we can use our equations to finish solving this problem. The first thing we're going to do here is determine that the bigger number is this 9, so that our a is underneath our x, making this a major axis that's horizontal. So a is equal to 3, b is equal to 1. We can solve for c using the equation a squared minus b squared. That's going to be c is equal to the square root of 8. Over here I simplified that. Now I'm going to go ahead and cover up my equations and then go ahead and solve for everything else. Our center is going to be negative 3, positive 1, so my h is negative 3, my k is 1. In order to find my vertices, I'm going to be using this equation. H, which is negative 3, plus a. A is going to be 3. So when I add these two together, I get 0, and my k is 1. When I subtract these two, I get negative 6, and then I also have a 1. For my focus, remember we're adding our center with the c, so negative 3 plus c, square root of 2 over 2, and using k is equal to 1. For the other one, it's going to be negative 3 minus c, which is negative 3 minus 2, square root of 2. K is still equal to 1. For our minor axis, we're going to be using h, which is negative 3 in both of these. And then k plus b. K is 1, b is 1. So 1 plus 1 is 2, and then 1 minus 1 would be 0. Okay. Finally, I have all the points. I can go ahead and graph. Our center, negative 3, positive 1. And then our vertices would be 0, 1 over here, and negative 6, 1 here. Okay. Minor axis would be negative 3, positive 2, and negative 3, 0. The focus, I just put an approximation of where those points are. Number 5. Number 5 says now we're going to write the equation of ellipse given a center and an endpoint, okay, and the length of the other axis. So the first thing I did here was identify the center. Our h is going to be 1. Our k will be 3. A major axis has a length of 8. The endpoint of a minor axis is 0, 3. The first thing I want to do here is go ahead and graph all these points. I went ahead and graphed my center, 1 and 3 here. I labeled the length of 8 for my major axis here. If we go back to our formula sheet, you will see here that the length of the major axis is 2a. So, and the length of the minor axis is 2b. Okay. A is half the length of the axis, which is 4, and then I also plotted my endpoint here, and I was able to determine b is equal to 1. Okay. So when I do this in the graph, I can see that my major axis is going to be a vertical axis, so I can eliminate these equations here. This is the format that I'm looking for. Okay. So first thing I did x minus h. Remember, h is 1, so x minus 1 squared, divided by b squared. Well, if b is equal to 1, b squared is going to be equal to 1. Okay. Plus y minus k, y minus 3. All of that is going to be squared, divided by a squared. A we determined to be 4, that is set equal to 1. Always set it equal to 1. 4 squared is 16, and this is going to be my final answer. Number 6 is a word problem, and it's involving this ellipse. So basically here is showing a figure of a doormat that measures 152 in length. Okay. It also gives us what our B is here, the distance from the center to the edge of the mat being 58. We need to find the distance P from the center where the y is going to be equal to 25 centimeters. So what we're looking for is this distance here. Okay? The first thing I need to do is find the equation. I know that my major axis here is going to be horizontal, so I'm going to use my formula sheet and I'm going to hide the vertical axis. Okay? Now I'm going to go ahead and say the center, I'm going to label that as 0, 0. So there's no h and there's no k. A is going to be equal half the length of the doormat, which ended up being 76. So I said 76 squared plus y squared divided by b squared. Well, b is going to be the distance from the center to the edge of the mat at 58. So b is 58, b squared would be 58 squared. Set that all equal to 1. So what we're trying to decide is what is x when y is 25. So all I did is I said x is equal to p, y is equal to 25. So I'm looking for the distance here, specifically called p, when y is 25. X is going to be equal to p, so I plug a p in here. I get the exact same thing, the exact same equation. And then y is 25, so I have 25 squared, which is here. And set it equal to 1. Now I'm just solving for p. All I did was subtract this ratio from both sides. And then here I multiplied everything by 76 squared. That's why I have the 76 squared here. The only thing you have to be careful with is rounding. I would leave it in the exact values in the calculator to make sure that you don't have a rounding error. Plug that into the calculator and you get p is equal to an approximation of 68.58 centimeters. Okay? It's asking us to round to the nearest hundredth, which I did here. Number 7. Number 7 says to find the focus of the ellipse given the equation in general form. So here again we have general form. We need to go ahead and complete the squares. The 16x squared is out in the front since it's the only one of its kind. I went ahead and factored out a 25 from the two y's, and then I took the 300 over to the other side. So 25 goes in the front, 1 minus 4, because 25 times 4 is negative 100. Okay? I added my blanks on both sides here, and then I completed the squares for the y. Negative 4, the middle term, divide that by 2, gets me a negative 2. When I square it, I get a 4. That goes in this blank over here. But remember, we have a 25 out here, so 4 times 25 is 100, which goes on the other side. Then I go ahead and factor it. The 16x squared just comes straight down, and then I have a 25 here. I use the variable inside this equation, which is y, in front of the parentheses here. So y minus 2 squared. Set all of that equal to, add these two together, you get 400. But remember, our equation needs to be equal to 1, so I divide everything by 400. Here I get x squared divided by 25 plus y minus 2 squared divided by 16 is equal to 1. I determined that our larger number is 25, making this a major axis on the horizontal because it's underneath the x. Our a is going to be 5, our b is going to be 4, and I can solve for c using the equation. C squared equals a squared minus b squared, which is 9. So c is equal to 3. Okay? Our center would be 0, positive 2, which means h is 0, k is 2. Then I'm going to use my equations to find the foci. Okay? Focus is going to be h plus c. H is going to be 0, h will be 0, c is going to be 3, so I would have 0 minus 3, k is 2, and 0 plus 3, k is 2. Simplify. Negative 3, 2, and 3, 2. If you're taking a paper exam, you will have a graph for each of these types of problems to help you. Sometimes it's easier if you graph it out. If you're taking the exam on the computer, you don't need to worry about the graph. All you'll need to do is solve for the points. Number 8 says to write the equation of an ellipse given the foci and a major axis length. We're given that the major axis length is 10 and the foci is at -3, 5, and -3, 1. First thing I did was go ahead and graph these points on a graph. Okay, so I put the foci here and the foci here, which means that this is going to be a vertical major axis. So when I'm looking at my equations, I'll be looking at a major axis that is vertical. Also notice here, it says that the major axis is 2A and the length of the minor axis is 2B. Since this is our major axis, we can say that A is equal to 10 divided by 2. In other words, A is going to be 5. So from the distance from the center to the vertice is going to be 5. Next thing we need to do is determine where the center is. You can take the vertices or you can use the foci and find the middle point. I'm going to go ahead and use the foci since that's what we were given. You're just basically taking the average of the two x. -3 plus -3 is -6 divided by 2 is going to give you a -3. If we look at our y's, we have 5 plus 1 is 6. Divide that by 2, that gives us a +3. So our center is going to be at -3, +3. We're going to use that as h is equal to -3 and k is going to be equal to +3. Now let's determine what our b is. Since we know our c, remember the c is the distance between the center and the foci, and here we can see that it's going to be 2. You can also see that the center is going to be at +3, and then over here to one of the foci it's going to be a difference of 2. To the other foci it's also a difference of 2. This is going to be our C. Okay. So let's go ahead and determine what our B is going to be. I'm going to use the equation found on the formula sheet right here, and I'm know C and I know A. I'm going to be rearranging it to solve for B. So here's my original equation. I added B squared to both sides and then subtracted the C squared. So I get B squared is equal to A squared minus C squared. A is going to be 5, so 5 squared is going to be 25. C is going to be 2, so 2 squared is going to be 4. 25 minus 4 is going to be 21. And then we want to take the square root of that value. So B is going to be equal to the square root of 21. To write our equation, we're going to go back and use this format. X minus h. H we said was -3. So here we're going to have x plus 3. A negative and a negative make a positive. Put those in parentheses and square it, and you're going to divide that by b squared. If b is equal to the square root of 21, b squared will be just 21. So I put the 21 in the denominator. Plus y minus k. K is going to be 3, so I just put a 3. Put all of that in parentheses, square it, divided by a squared. We had already said that a is equal to 5, so I just put 5 squared, which is 25, and set all of that equal to 1. So this is going to be our final equation. Okay, that concludes this worksheet walkthrough. Let me know if you have any questions.